Hey, True Believers. Chris Mack coming at you with Uncanny X-Men 335. This is part 13 of our Onslaught event. And man, have things gotten crazy. If you remember reading Onslaught X-Men, the stakes were increased, and this kind of leads with the aftermath, and it starts to build, plots up. So we open up on Ozymandias, and if you guys remember, he was kind of the predominant character in Uncanny X-Men 333. And that, as I said in the last review, it kind of felt like that was sort of a throwaway issue because it focused more on the fallout of what happened to Wolverine going feral after the Dark Riders tried to pump adamantium back into him that they stole from Cyber. And yeah. But anyway, what I like is it says here, once upon a time, when civilization was young, he fancied himself a king. Over the centuries, however, he realized how naive he was to presume he knew anything about power. And at that moment, we are reintroduced to Apocalypse, and this issue is called Apocalypse Lives. And so I like how in the composition here, they show Ozymandias small and weak compared to Sabanur, and just very nice composition here. And to continue with what they're explaining, it says it was not always this way. When they first met upon the desert sands of Egypt, in the shadow of the half-built pyramids, Ozymandias ruled, and it was the slave known as Sabanur who served. But that was before the genetic fury ripped forth from the young slave, before he learned he was a mutant, before he knew it was Apocalypse's destiny to survive. And so, kind of getting into the names here, so it was Lobdell writing, Madureira doing the art, Townsend, I believe, doing the inks or the colors, Buccellato doing the coloring, I believe. I get a little confused when they do this because without kind of really giving proper, I know I've gone over each of them, but it helps. And then of course Starkings and Comicraft, and then Bob Harris was the editor-in-chief at this time. So doing it like this just really kind of kills it and sort of like, wait a minute, okay, I see names, but let's be a little more specific, please. So anyway, Apocalypse is reborn. And what I like is he's ascending into the night, and he goes, Xavier has fallen from grace. From once there were two, Magneto and Professor X. Now there is one. They stand united. They are Onslaught, teetering on the precipice between madness and omnipotence. Ironic, is it not, that I would have spent even a fraction of my long life dedicated to destroying the defenders of the weak, those called X-Men, only to learn that left to their own devices, they would have more soundly defeat themselves. And one other thing I wanted to bring up that I just totally had a blonde moment on, going back to the first page, remember how I said Ozymandias could create visions from his mind? Well, as you can see here, we have the Fantastic Four in the background. Just kind of wanted to point out that foreshadowing there, because Apocalypse gets more into it, talking about the age of the end of wonders is at its near. And Ozymandias goes, the age of wonders, a time when men flew to the stars and fell to the earth as gods. Fantastic Four. When the favored son of immortal Asgard once more walked the earth and embraced mortals, Thor, and assemblages of heroes gathered to avenge those unable to defend themselves, the Avengers. And Ozymandias is like, how can you even know that this Age of Wonders is ending? And that's because Uatu, the Watcher, is here. He is here to bear silent witness to the end of the Age of Wonders. And all he can do is observe, as only the fittest survive. And so usually, when we see Uatu, the Watcher, he always kind of seems passive and indifferent. but he actually has like a legitimate look of worry on his face. So we cut now back to Westchester County, and the Avengers, along with X-Men, are coming to aid the X-Men because, Nate was explaining that there's something wrong with Xavier. Can't you people see it? And Cap doesn't want to believe it, neither does Iron Man. Actually said Xavier's a longtime friend. But anyway, they decide if there is some trouble, we should go look. And they see that the mansion is destroyed. And the X-Men, thinking that they're under attack again, jump on the Avengers. So Gambit and Pietro get into a big fight about it. So Bishop kind of gets in the mix. But then what I like here is Wanda and Vision are like, as two of the newest members of the X-Men, you might not realize our team have a long history of working together. If we are needed, the Avengers stand ready to offer assistance. Yeah, well, right now you can't say that they're a little, hesitant. And here comes a bolt of lightning from Storm. And she says, we've been having something of a difficult time with our friends of late, Avengers. And that's putting it one way. If you will bear with us a moment, old friends, you will understand why you must allow Phoenix to telepathically verify your identities before we can accept your generous offer of assistance. And so Nate has a moment where he sees Jean and he calls her Maddie. So that's kind of something interesting that you really want to explore. And now what I like here is they show how the totality of Nate Grey's power, because the Avengers don't believe the X-Men about this Onslaught character. So what he does is he plucks, he simultaneously plucks images from every mutant's mind to make a living, breathing, three-dimensional construction of Onslaught. And he's just kind of like, whew. And what I like here is, who is this? I think that's Iron Man. I'm not 100% sure who that is flying right there, because that's bad color choice. But it says, well, while I'm fairly new to all of this, I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that's the bad guy. So, yeah, they understand what the stakes are now. And what I like is Cyclops comes in, doesn't take any more shenanigans. He goes, the being who attacked us, it calls itself Onslaught. Buried somewhere in the psionic form is the man the X-Men have known and trusted for years, since he brought us all together. And so finally there starts to become some sort of parlay where everyone finally decides to sit down and form a plan of action. But what I like is how they talk about, like Bobby, he brings it up the best. He goes, yeah, well, turns out he isn't exactly on his own. By what we saw and what he said, Xavier's mind is somehow being influenced by Magneto. No. How did I know our father was somehow involved in all this? Again. Now, we jump over to Muir Island, where this is Excalibur at the time, so it's Kitty, Colossus, I believe that's Magma. I'm not 100% sure. If I'm wrong, let me know. And then, of course, Kitty Pryde. And so Moira gets to see that the X-Men are alive, but she sees what's happened to Charles and what the threat is. And then Colossus is saying, why are we all sitting around staring at each other when we should be in the States helping the others? And Moira says, because I asked Kurt to hold off deploying Excalibur just yet, Colossus. For the very same reason I requested Cyclops and Phoenix come here as quickly as I can. Charles Xavier is one of my oldest friends. Once we were more than that. Which is why I hate to even say this. The key to defeating this onslaught may exist right here. So Kitty's like, what are you talking about? She says, we never wanted to come to this, Kitty. Wisdom. When it be time to unseal the Xavier protocols. And so Bob said if you want to know more about that, read Excalibur 100, which we will not be with this review because I don't have Excalibur. We're focusing mostly on the X-Men titles with a few scattered extras that I do have, but I don't have like X-Factor, X-Force, or Excalibur from this time, sadly. Or Avengers, because it says to read Avengers number 400. Yeah, I'm going to have to leave that up to you guys. Now, again, when we first are introduced to Bishop, what is it, on Uncanny X-Men 281, I think it is, or 280, we kind of get brought back in the time. Oh, wait, here it is. Hold on. Uncanny X-Men 287. When Bishop's in his timeline, and he sees this image of Jean, and she goes, you may have killed the X-Men. And I like that Lobdell took this Onslaught event and tied it back to this old, the X-Men being portrayed, which had not been expounded upon for years. And that was kind of one of the big reasons for bringing Bishop to this world, and it was just like the writers kind of just dropped it. And what I like here is Lobdell says, while this recording was made less than an hour ago, the man called Bishop has heard these very words echo in his very dreams since the moment he traveled back into this era, so 287. He had hoped that by somehow having limited knowledge of the past, he might be able to change the X-Men's destiny. He was wrong. Now, what I like with this issue, because leading up to this, what was it? X-Men number... Ooh, what number was it? Hang on, let me see if I can remember off the top of my head. It was X-Men number 50... No, it wasn't 50. I think it was like 52 or 53. Let me know down in the comments which one it was, because I can't remember off the top of my head. But it was the one with the X-Babies. And remember Remy and Gambit, Remy and Bishop are going undercover. And Bishop's talking about how I don't trust you. I think you're the betrayer. Because he said there's someone from my time that they call, what was, I don't remember what they called Gambit. Let me know down in the comments what they called him, because I can't remember off the top of my head. But he said he was once called LeBeau, and he was the only survivor from that. And so Gambit's like, you don't trust me? And he goes, well, I could kill you as easy as I wanted to. He's like, if I wanted to, I could have killed you right now, LeBeau. So there's a whole lot of unshakiness leading up to this. So I like that once everything finally hit its fever pitch, these two finally, I owe you an apology, Remy. Don't bother on me. I just have one of those personalities people find suspicious. Take comfort in the small certainties, Bishop. You'll always be a raven paranoid, and I'm always going to be a charming louse. So I appreciate that Lobdell finally kind of brought that to a close, especially introducing who the actual betrayer was. Now, teams start to come together. The Avengers come to the mansion. We have the X-Men. X-Force comes in, and I love, there's Domino, Siren, there's a Sunspot, and everybody starts to make plans. And this is where everything kind of starts to feel like where books start to, plots start to develop and things start to go their own way. Because the important one here, Logan's saying, been kind of tough lately. Thinking and all, holding my head together after what happened with Genesis, which was Wolverine 100. Makes sense now why Chuck wasn't rushing to help sort things out. Gotta remember that. Hold on, Chuck, wherever you are. You never once doubted I could tame my own problems. No way I'm gonna let you face this on your own. And then Vision says, Wolverine, will you be joining us on? Nope. I got a hunch I need to play out. So it says, which Logan will in Wolverine 104. So make sure to check out that book. I promise we will get there. We needed to build the groundwork before I get to this to understand where we're going with this whole event. Now we get some moments with Betsy and Angel, because their plot point really kind of fell by the wayside. And then, of course, we get another moment with Dark Beast and how he's wanting to basically be the slave of Onslaught, which we found out in the event book before this. But what's important that we want to remember here is while Onslaught's talking about how the world will be his, it goes deep in the heart of this Onslaught. Charles Francis Xavier quietly rages against the dying light of a dream. So, I know I've said these in my other videos. I like how Scott Lobdell took an idea where he said he just wanted to create someone strong enough that could punch the Juggernaut across the world, essentially. And then Marvel's like, hey, that's a good idea. What do you want to do? I think he said he called it Onslaught, and he didn't know what else to do with it. So I like that all of a sudden, they want this big thing with Onslaught going on. So Lobdell had to kind of come up with it. And I love that, we had this book. Then he was writing Generation X. I think Mark Waid was doing X-Men. And then, of course, the X-Factor, X-Force, all the X books. Let's just leave it at that. And then tie it into the entire Marvel universe. And he did his best. Yes, there's some parts of this story that are, a little bumpy. So like X-Men 50, when they talk about the Herald of Onslaught and we're introduced to Post. Never see Post again. And there's never was a Herald. But nonetheless, I love how everything starts to kind of flow and tensions are built up, all the while still getting a good story. Because at the end of the day, event or not, that's what's important. That's what sells comics. Speaking of which, if you guys have enjoyed this comic, please make sure to support your local comic shop. I know right now it's nigh impossible to go to a comic shop, but if you call them and if they have this issue, they can either mail deliver it, curbside service it, or they'll bring it by your house. My local comic shop, what they did when I had my pull is I paid over the phone, or you can pay on PayPal. And they came to my house and they left it on the doorstop for that social distancing. So that was really cool and I appreciated that. So there's options for that. And if you guys have enjoyed this comic book or this review or both, we definitely appreciate it if you take a moment to hit like, share, and subscribe. Definitely helps the club channel more than you could possibly know. And if you wouldn't mind hitting that fancy little Onslaught bell next to subscribe, that way as we continue to upload content, you guys will get notified. You can come to the page, and we love to have a dialogue with y'all down in the comments below or on our social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave the links in the description below. So with all that said, I hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.